Welcome to Week 10 Fantasy Football Live. I'm your host, Jason Fitz, sitting with Matt Harmon, Chris Allen, Justin Boone, all the way up until 1 p.m. Eastern, all the way up until those kickoffs. We'll get you set with the actives, the inactives. Scooch on over, make yourself comfortable, get ready for some fun that we're going to have this morning. Harmon, how are we feeling this morning, buddy?
Feeling good, man. We got a pretty interesting international game kicking us off here in Week 10. I've enjoyed watching that. Nice to see Alec Pierce continue to have what's been a really strong season for him. Drake London catches a touchdown, so the Falcons are adhering to the just throw to your good players philosophy. Maybe a little bit more of that I'd like to see, but nevertheless, pretty good international game here. So that's a nice start here to Week 10 on Sunday.
All right, I'm going to scoot on over to Chris Allen. Chris Allen, the board says not today. Why not today, bud?
Well, because over the past couple of weeks, I've had to watch my Bengals disappoint me in ways that I couldn't even imagine coming into the season. So it was week 9, week 8, they had the poor loss. Week 8, it's the same thing. Also having to relive that on the recap show. So today, like they said in the Game of Thrones, what do we say to the God of Death? But in this case, I'm going to go with Mike Brown and the Blackburns. Not today. They're on bye. They can't hurt me today. So we're going to have a good show today, fellas, because don't have any disappointment on my radar for Week 10.
Yeah, I feel that. I got to go through my hurt on Thursday night, so nothing can hurt me today. Justin Boone, how we feeling today, buddy?
Dark, gloomy day where I am. So, yeah, that's not great. But we got football to warm us up here, Fitz, including this morning game. So, feeling good about that. Always feeling good on Sunday.
Yeah, let's get you caught up on the game. We'll check in real quick. Falcons, Colts, Berlin actually getting a good football game this morning. 17-13 right now, the Falcons up. You see Drake London, 4 catches, 72 yards. Jonathan Taylor, 3 catches, also has 99 yards in this, and touchdown. A couple of inopportune fumbles. One was lost by the Colts. It's given the Falcons some field position. We will keep you updated so that you know exactly what it means for your team. And again, we're here all the way up till we get your lineup set. Hashtag AskFFL is how you get in on the fun on Twitter X. You can send in your last-minute roster questions. You can also drop a comment in the YouTube chat. We will get to as many of them as we can. Let's take a look, gentlemen, at the actives and inactives list from the early games. DeAndre Swift and Ted McMillan active. Garrett Wilson active. Aaron Jones active. Look at all that positive news. Active. Let's see if we can keep that going with the later afternoon games, though. Questionable right now for Cooper Kupp. Torrey Horton, here's who, doubtful, and then Matthew Golden, questionable. So we'll get into what that means over the course of the show, but let's get to what to watch in Week 10. Matt Harmon, what do you have your eyes on?
Yeah, let's stick in that what we were just talking about there, those players, the Seahawks wide receivers, Cooper Kupp, Torrey Horton. Really interested to learn potentially a lot about this wide receiver room here in week number 10. Torrey Horton, big game last time we saw him. He's probably not going to play today, as you mentioned here, but they are getting Rashid Shaheed, who they traded for at the NFL's trade deadline on Tuesday. And man, I really, really like this move for Seattle for a variety of different reasons. Number one, Rashid Shaheed played with Clint Kubiak last year, so we know that there's some system familiarity there. He's a guy who I think is really underrated as a full field player, can win at not just win at all 3 levels, but I think win at all 3 receiver positions. So while JSN has been excellent so far this year, he's on pace for 2,000 receiving yards. He's been one of, if not the best wide receivers in pro football this year. I think there's actually a chance that Shaheed, and eventually when Horton gets, back and is activated a little bit more, I think those 2 guys being perimeter threats who can win down the field can actually help JSN be maximized at different wide receiver spots, as he's mostly just hung out at X receiver so far this year. So the Seahawks passing game has been a place to invest. There's a lot of buoyancy in that passing game. I'm really interested to see if there's even more juice to squeeze over the back half of the year as they get Cooper Kupp back to kind of be a move-around player. Can they get JSN these different matchups? And obviously Shaheed is a guy who I think jumps into immediate, high-ceiling flex territory with this move to Seattle.
Yeah, I'm not sure why the Shaheed trade didn't get more love. I love your call there. Boone, what do you got for us? What you got your eyes on?
I mean, I'm looking at the Lions offense right now, and I'm wondering, is this the time when they're actually going to get hot? Because you go back to before the season, I mean, Harmon and I talked about it a bunch of times on the show that we were worried about the offensive coordinator change. We were worried about the offensive line concerns, and they had a bunch of outdoor games early in the season, which is not good for Jared Goff. His splits, outdoors versus indoors, not great. Home versus away, all that stuff. And yet we look at their schedule now the rest of the way, and they have a great matchup this week against the Commanders. And down the stretch, their last 6 games of the fantasy season, including the fantasy playoffs, they are all indoors. 4 of them are at home. So I think this is the time to really buy into this Lions offense. And I think even after some struggles earlier in the season, we're going to see them get hot, and we're going to see them help people make it to the fantasy playoffs and potentially make it to the fantasy championship.
Now, the Lions getting hot would be absolutely delightful for that back half of the season for a lot of us. All right, not hot is the Jags offense. Jakobi Meyers, in my mind, look, he's a better wide receiver than a lot of people want to make him. In fact, I'd say he's a chef. He makes chicken salad out of chicken you-know-what constantly at the wide receiver position with the quarterbacks he's had to throw to him. I think this is a really good move by the Jags and acquire him if you look at what he can bring to the field. But it's also a broken passing game. And nothing changes the fact that right now it feels like a broken passing game, in part to me because it just doesn't feel like Trevor Lawrence knows where he wants to go with the football at times. I don't know why the language of communication isn't working, but it isn't working. And talent at the wide receiver position hasn't, to me, been the real issue in the Jags offense. Communication of the offense overall has been the issue. So you can put more talent around, but they weren't lacking in that department anyway, and they haven't been able to take advantage of some of what I thought should be huge advantage matchups for them over the course of several different games this season because they just don't have the rhythm and sync as a passing game. It does not feel yet like Trevor Lawrence and Liam Cohen are speaking the same language. So while I like the Jakobi Meyers addition a lot from a talent standpoint and what it can mean for the Jags, I don't think the Jags passing game is going to be suddenly fixed. I don't think this is a big play you want to make simply because I just don't think Trevor Lawrence is out there thunder of the gods the way we think Trevor Lawrence should be. Chris, what's on your mind as a discussion point this week?
So for this week, let's see what the Packers can do now without Tucker Kraft on the field. And my biggest question for them is not who's catching the ball, but where and how they're getting the ball to those receivers and those pass catchers that we're looking at for fantasy production. Because coming into week 9, Jordan Love was second amongst all quarterbacks in explosive passing rate, and his pass catchers were around the top end of the league in terms of yards after the catch per reception. But Love himself, he was 20th in dropbacks per game and tied for 12th in the most turnover-worthy plays per PFF. He's essentially the Breaking Bad can't keep getting away with it meme. And the big reason was because of Tucker Kraft, who was averaging not just 11.2 yards after the catch per reception, but 21 of his 30 catches were resulting in a first down. And so now without him in the offense, like what does this mean? How can they shift things around to continue that passing production, to keep that Green Bay offense on schedule? And now it would have been something of a tight turnaround. I would have liked to have seen them trade for somebody like your Michael Mayer, Fitzy, but still, let's see if they make some of those offensive adjustments. Something like Justice Mosqueda, who works over at Acme Packing Company, suggested that they try and use more quick game concepts in order to keep that offense on schedule, which they can do if they keep a guy like Romeo Doubs in his X-receiver type of role, maybe shift somebody like Christian Watson from that deep flanker position he's used since coming back from the ACL tear into something a bit more manageable, intermediate parts of the field. And with the combination of, let's say, Luke Musgrave, the running backs, and even slot wide receiver Savion Williams, this could be that short to intermediate options for Jordan Love that turns him from this trick play, explosive passing game type of operation to something a bit more normal than what we've seen over the first 7, 8, 9 weeks of the season. So it's going to be something of a tough test going up against the Vic Fangio defense and the Eagles coming off a bye to try all these adjustments, but that's going to be the thing that I'm be watching for in this game. There should be the same types of pass catchers we should expect to see getting the ball, but where and how they get the ball should be the biggest talking point for the Packers in week 10.
All right, Boone is our resident rankings expert. He's got to get the final tweaks in before kickoff. Got a lot of work to do. So we're going to let him go tweak his rankings and start moving things up. In my mind, it's like Charlie Day. He's got the board. He's just suddenly moving this one over to here, and he's got the whole mailroom conspiracy. So we'll let him go do that. In the meantime, we'll take a look at some last-minute pickups. These are players that are actually out there that you can still get your hands on that can make a difference this week. Matt Harmon, what do you got for me?
Yeah, I'll talk about Parker Washington, Jacksonville Jaguars wide receiver. I like your analysis about how Jakobi Meyers is not just going to come in here and be a cure-all for this Jaguars offense, Fitz, but he does bring them another body, which I think helps this overall passing offense feel a little bit more stable with some of the injuries that have happened lately. The key, though, here for Washington is that Liam Cohen said this week that despite Jakobi Meyers being a 50% plus slot player for the Raiders when he was there. He is actually going to start out as an outside receiver for this team, which I think is fine. Jakobi Meyers can win outside. He was only in the slot on 33% of his snaps last season with the Raiders when he had the best year of his career. He's been over 70% success rate versus man coverage in multiple seasons that I've charted with him for reception perception. He can play outside, and Cohen sounds like it says he's gonna start there because it's easier to learn. So Washington is going to remain in the slot, which I think is critical for his role. Like, it is not a coincidence that last week he had the best game, his best performance of the season, when he was in the slot on over 60% of the passing snaps for the Jaguars last week out against your Raiders, Fitz. So Parker Washington being an outside receiver with like a 20 air yard per target mark like we've seen sometimes this year, I'm not interested in that. Parker Washington as the slot receiver for this team, I think that fits his skill set much, much more. So he's definitely somebody you can get away with playing as a wide receiver 3 flex candidate this week.
Yeah, we could spend a whole show, brother, going on about why I can't figure out why Chip Kelly has not used Jacoby more outside and done some trickery with Brock around the tight end and slot area. All right, I digress. Opportunity lost. Chris, what do you got for us, man? Who's the last minute pickup for you?
So I'm going to go back to the well with Darius Slayton, wide receiver for the Giants. Just looking at his usage over the past couple of weeks, 2 straight games with plus 20% of the targets, and actually led the team in air yards in their last week's game. And I'd say that Slayton's 67% end zone target rate were a plus, but he actually literally dropped a touchdown while trying to brace himself. So maybe getting some of those looks once he goes into the end zone aren't the best thing, but still the opportunity is there. The volume is there. And of course, he's going up against the Bears, who are 5th in points per game allowed to the wide receiver position. And look at some of the previous matchups that the Bears secondary has faced. We'll set aside the Bengals insanity from week 9, because if I have to relive it again, it's just going to wind up hurting me. But we saw Chris Olave get by them for 5 for 98 and 2 touchdowns, and one of them came on a 57-yard deep bomb. Zay Flowers tagged him for 7 for 63, and even Rachaad Bateman actually caught them deep on a 36-yard explosive. So looking at where Slayton is typically used for the Giants offense, it does lend itself to a productive game. The only caveat I would add to it is that for today, Chicago, they should be experiencing around 22, 23 mile per hour winds going across Soldier Field. Should be in line with the stadium, so no chance for a cross breeze. But still, if there is going to be a chance for fewer pass attempts, that might affect what Darius Slayton could be for this game. But still, with the volume there for him, he should be at least a solid wide receiver 3 or flex option for week 10.
Love that call by you. All right, let's get to the chat. We're going to check the chat, some of the comments coming in on the YouTube chat. By the way, Boone can still hear us, I'm sure. So I just want to point out, drink beer and travel. Boone, the pride of Canada. Boone 2029. Look, I'm in for this. Like, drink beer and travel, by the way, is a great name anyway. But Boone for the pride. Boone's back for this pride of Canada. How we feeling, buddy? 2029. We running. What are we doing?
Hey, you're going to call me out like that? I'll definitely pop back in for a second and say thank you for that one. And yeah, love that handle. That is great. That's what Canada's all about. It's fantastic.
That is, look, if the rankings are screwed up now, it's on drink beer and travel. That's all I'm saying. Boone's over here, he's sitting back, not even focused anymore. All right, let's get to the next question. The next question comes from Ricky Cook 6522. Says, weather quarterbacks, Dart, Caleb, or Fields? All right, Chris, what do you think?
Between those two, I'll still go Jackson Dart, because his rushing production has been something that's been a positive for him. So even though you might have some general concerns about who he's going to be throwing to, his on-field efficiency has been something that's kept him afloat throughout most of the season. And of course, the rushing, once they get inside the 5, inside the 10, should continue to prop him up. So out of that group, I would say, because Fields going up against the Browns defense, that's going to be tough. Caleb, we do know that they have more of a solid rushing game than the erratic passing game, or at least somewhat inconsistent pass game we've seen out of Chicago. So out of that group, I would lean more towards Jackson Dart, even though, again, pass catching core, not as great as what Fields should have, or not, Caleb Williams should have instead.
It just feels early to be talking about the fact that there's snow in the forecast in Chicago. I'm not ready for that. I am not ready for bad football to look even worse because of weather. But hey, I'm here for it. All right, the next question comes from Chris Williams, who says, #AskFFL. Do you see Kamara being used more in the pass game now because RB1 is out of the question? Harmon, what say you?
No, I don't. We haven't seen it so far through 10 weeks of the NFL season. And yeah, just that's not the way this coaching staff wants to run their offense. The quick game in this offense flows through the wide receivers. It doesn't flow through check downs to Alvin Kamara, which is what we've seen previously, obviously, with Derek Carr at quarterback. So, no, I think he's a guy that Justin Boone and I put in the coping corner in the People's Panic Meter this week. I think he is a guy that this is what it is going to be this season. If you drafted him, you're not going to get anything close to the returns that you expected. And, yeah, he would have to be using the passing game to really elevate his stock at this point. But we haven't seen it at this point. I see no reason why it's going to change.
Okay, we'll keep them coming here. The next one comes from Jacino. We'll go with that. Good morning. Should I start Kittle or Schultz? I'm leaning towards Schultz because of the matchup and the fact that Kittle has been non-existent so far. And thank you. Chris Allen, what say you?
I wouldn't say non-existent. On the positive points, Kittle has at least been out there for around 80% of the routes in his few games back from the hamstring injury. So he's getting his cardio in. While he might not look right as a receiver, I would say, though, that his target share has been on a steady uptick, around 9% in his first game back and just short of 20% last week. I do think one of those big boom games are coming for him. We just haven't seen him really get to have the chance to stretch his legs a little and make some of those magical catches over the middle of the field and create after the catch. But in this game, I would say, though, that he should have that ability to do that. So I would lean more towards Kittle, and especially with Dalton Schultz catching passes from Davis Mills, I'd rather take the guy catching passes from Mac Jones.
Davis Mills versus Mac Jones. These are great conversations. It shows you exactly where this NFL season has gone. All right, it's time to give out some grades. Coming up, we're going to give out some midterms. We might have been scared of them when we were in school, but we're not scared to give them out right now. We'll figure out some of the best and worst on the rookies so far. They're going to be professor rooms. This should be very, very fluid. We'll tell you about it next. Welcome back to Fantasy Football Live. I'm Jason Fitz, sitting with Matt Harmon, Chris Allen. Justin Boone will be back with us in just a moment. Falcons are up 17-13 on the Colts. The Colts went for it on fourth down, deep in territory about the 5-yard line. They were turned away. Falcons get the ball back. We'll keep you updated on what happens throughout the course of this match. But in the meantime, gentlemen, let's get to a little bit of fun with some fantasy feast. It's almost Thanksgiving. This fantasy feast comes in the form of Buffalo versus Miami. Buffalo favored by 9.5. That game going to be a sweaty 85-degree Miami day with some scattered thunderstorms. I'm going full meteorologist on this. So, Harmon, what's on your mind with this game?
Yeah, the Miami Dolphins are bad, really bad. But Jalen Waddle is really, really good. So there's a silver lining for you. And I think this team knows this because they got a lot of calls about Jalen Waddle at the trade deadline. and he is not going anywhere, right? He is remaining with this team, as we know. He is someone that I think has just increased his value this year, and it's really not due to anything except just, hey, look, there's no more Tyreek Hill, obviously, and so ever since he's been down, it's just been hit after hit after hit every single week for Jalen Waddle. Outside of that game in Cleveland with the wind and the conditions, and of course Tua just cannot thrive in that environment. So Jalen Waddle, that's like his one cold moment since Tyreek Hill went down. But what I've really loved to see from Jalen Waddle is he's kind of debunking the narrative that, targets are earned. I think over a long sample, yes, targets are earned. Good players tend to get the football, as I mentioned earlier. Just start your good players. However, he was just in a bad situation previously where he was behind 3 guys, including Tyreek Hill, who were in kind of that designed touches area, and he plays for a quarterback who we all see when he's off his first read, he's just dumping that football off and bailing on the play. Now that Jalen Waddle is the first read guy, he's crushing every single week. He's showing himself to be someone who can be the leader of a passing game and an every week wide receiver 1 in fantasy. So I've loved what I've seen from Jalen Waddle this year. I'm hoping for only good things the rest of this year and even into 2026 and beyond.
All right, I've got my eye on James Cook in this game like so many of us, but here's the thing. Don't just read your injury report and presume because he's playing everything's going to be fine. I get worried about games like this because, as Harmon just alluded to, the Dolphins are bad. The Dolphins are terrible. This game is a 9.5-point spread for a reason. So what I see is a banged-up running back that's coming off of what could have been, it wasn't fine for a hip drop tackle, a little bit of a controversy on that, but an already bad ankle gets worse. And now you've got a blowout game. And what I'm trying to figure out is just because Cook is healthy, do we actually believe there'll be enough usage of Cook in this game? This feels to me like the sort of the game that the Bills are up big early on, and the minute this game is in control, why are you risking any wear and tear on the back of your running back? I understand on the ankle of your running back in this situation. I understand that James Cook is active and is going to be in this game. I just get nervous about overall usage of him because I think the Bills are going to win this game by so much that they're going to sort of glass case him and use him more as a decoy than he is an actual running back in this game. Why risk him when this is a game that you can easily win? Chris, what do you got your eyes on in this one?
So for this one, I'm looking at the Bills passing game, and this is more to just solidify this idea that it really is for the Bills and Josh Allen. It's Khalil Shakir and Dalton Kincaid and nobody else. Because if you were to look at the Bills passing game on a week-to-week basis, you would think this is more of a diverse aerial attack for Josh Allen because you've got, through the season as of right now, 8 different pass catchers have 10 or more targets on the season, and most of them have their own roles, right? You have your field stretchers and your boundary guys from Joshua Palmer, Keon Coleman, even Elijah Moore catching some deep shots here and there. But if you look at how those targets are allocated, it's really just concentrated around those 2 guys. I mean, as of right now, out of Josh Allen's passing yards, 44% of them have been produced by just Dalton Kincaid and Khalil Shakir. I mean, Kincaid and Shakir, I mean, they are the top 2 in terms of that passing totem pole in obvious passing attempts for Josh Allen. They equal about 47% of those targets. If Josh Allen is under pressure, guess who he goes to? Shakir and Kincaid are the top 12, or the top with 12 targets with across each of those 2. And of course, I mean, once he gets into the red zone, those are those 2 options that Allen has been looking to most frequently. I bring all this up because folks are still rostering Keon Coleman, hoping he turns into something on a week in and week out basis. And I probably have Dawson Knox on a dynasty roster or 2, hoping he falls into the end zone, and really haven't seen that come to fruition all too often. So, of course, Josh Allen is one of those quarterbacks that he can do anything with the ball in his hands. But this late in the season, when we need to have some level of confidence about who we're putting into our starting lineups, I mean, those types of guys, I mean, Shakir and Kincaid should be those guys we look to, whereas some of those deeper options, whether it is Coleman, whether it is Knox, or even I apologize if you have forced to start Joshua Palmer or Elijah Moore. I mean, you really do need to look to other options because from the Bills' passing standpoint, it really is just Shakir and Kincaid.
All right, so we got a question. I'll ask you this from Kevin Woodward in the chat saying, McBride or Kincaid, non-PPR scoring league only. Chris Allen, what say you?
I'll go with McBride out of that group just for the fact that they do have Jacoby Brissett under center, and he has that whole Arizona passing game has looked better with Brissett. I think we've had a number of conversations about how easier the offense does look because Brissett does like to play under center. That play action passing game does look better. And of course, the rapport that he's been able to show with not just Trey McBride, but also Marvin Harrison in order to keep that offense on schedule has been something of a positive without having Kyler Murray working out of shotgun more often than not. So while I do think it's close, I would lean a bit more towards Trey McBride just for this week. But it is it's very close.
Look, anytime you guys are telling us it's close, we all feel better about it because it means it's a tough decision. Okay, the culture in the red zone. We'll keep you updated on if it results in points. But in the meantime, let's get to some rookie report cards. We get to give out grades, and by we, I mean you guys get to give out grades. Let's see who the tough grader is and the easy grader is. Matt Harmon, I'll let you go first. I'm going to give you the name Emeka Egbuka, and you would give him what grade, sir?
Oh, I'm giving him an A, and I don't think this is about being an easy grader. I think he's earned this. He's wide receiver 10 in points per game so far this year, despite having a little bit of a slow couple weeks before his bye, and I think that's why it's a good time to talk about Emeka Egbuka. Feels like the tenor has kind of cooled on him in this fantastic rookie season that he's having. I think that is completely unjustified. We got to remember two things. One, Baker Mayfield, great quarterback, awesome quarterback. We know he has some streaky moments, and I think he's had a couple streaky games here right before the bye. We saw in Detroit where Emeka Egbuka was playing, but a lot of inaccurate passes going his way. Wasn't always consistent and clean from him and Baker Mayfield there. I think that irons itself out, smooths itself out over a long sample. I'm not concerned about Baker at all. The other thing, Egbuka is playing through a hamstring injury. He was playing through a hamstring injury those 2 weeks before the bye. I thought he was going to miss multiple weeks going into that bye week. He toughed it out. He played through it. And typically, that's when players start to get some unjustified heat and unjustified crap from the communities. Oh, where's my stats? Well, they're playing through an injury, and they might just not be as big of a focal point. But I think from an isolation standpoint, from a fantasy standpoint, he has just been fantastic this year. I give him an A, and I think he's going to be awesome the rest of the way.
I just love the concept of some slob on a couch with 4 bowls of candy right now and like mouthful of popcorn yelling about a guy not getting him his numbers with a hamstring injury. I'm just saying. All right. Now that I've fat shamed a bunch of people.
I'm with you.
Chris Allen, I'll give you another name. Save me from myself. Jackson Dart. Give me a grade on the Dart.
B+. And I'll say I don't think it's a stretch to say that Dart is the best quarterback out of his class. I mean, and I get it. I mean, the Giants took him 25th overall, so there were some expectations about his talent. But I wouldn't say that his situation, even coming into the season, was objectively better than Cam Ward's with the infrastructure they were theoretically trying to build in Tennessee. And I'm not just giving a B+ to Dart because of his fantasy success. I mean, Dart's 0.08 EPA per dropback is not only top amongst the rookies, and actually he's the only rookie quarterback with a positive efficiency mark so far through the season, but it's 15th amongst all starters. And that's without Malik Neighbors since week 4. Tyrone Tracy's been in and out of the lineup. His center suffered a concussion and missed time. There's been a litany of injuries, not just to the offensive side, but to the defensive side to the Giants. I mean, his mobility has been something of a strength, which is why I was talking about him earlier as a potential start for this week, because right now he's averaging the 8th most rushing yards amongst all quarterbacks while generating the 2nd most EPA on scrambles. He's keeping that offense on schedule. But Jackson Dart, and I know you listen to this show, I mean, my brother in Christ, protect yourself, my guy. I mean, for the number of hits that he's been taking, he's taken the 6th most hits amongst quarterbacks since taking over. And we've seen how many other players from the Giants have now been placed on an IR because of the amount of contact they've been taking. So even though he has the 2nd most design rushes, so we want that fantasy production. And that's really the only reason why I take his grade down to B+, because he's doing all the things we want from fantasy. But man, just try and maintain some level of health throughout the rest of the season so we can get him into 2026 and hopefully see him throwing more passes to Malik Neighbors at some point in the future.
Yeah, you're right. Not only is he taking hits too, like he's taking punches. Like he lays himself out there. All right, Harmon, Matthew Golden, give me a grade.
I'm going to be a tough grader here, sort of. Matthew Golden, I'm going to give a D so far this year. From a fantasy football standpoint, I mean, he is wide receiver 78 in points per game. So, I mean, that would probably earn you an F, honestly. Maybe I'm being generous. These are the names he's around in terms of points per game, 5.28. Robbie Chosen, Malik Washington, Juju Smith-Schuster, Christian Kirk, Luke McCaffrey, Josh Palmer, not a bunch of luminaries there in terms of where Matthew Golden keeps his company. That being said, I do think he has helped the offense in certain ways that do not result in a bunch of fantasy production. I think he has helped increase the verticality here. He's helped like lift the lid, give some space to the run game. He's been useful when he's been targeted and when those passes have been completed. He actually has a rather high EPA per target, again, because when he's been targeted and when he's caught the football, those have been positive plays for the Packers offense. The problem is he's not getting a lot of targets, not getting a lot of opportunity. And I think part of that is the way the Packers design their offense. They don't believe in funneling targets to one individual wide receiver. We'll see if that changes. Now that Tucker Kraft is gone, I tend to doubt it. But so far, Matthew Golden's kind of just been a poor man's version of Jaden Reed. And I think people were hoping for a lot more than that. I'm not saying he's going to be bad forever, but I think he's just been okay in isolation and not really getting a lot of targets that would equate to fantasy value. So far, I think you got to give him a D so far in his rookie season.
All right, Chris, let's get one more in here. Tet McMillan. What grade are you giving Tet?
I was originally going to give him a B-, but after looking through some notes, I'll kick him up to a B. And first off, before I get into the analysis, this observation is probably only going to hit about 2% of the listeners. But every time I look at Teteroa McMillan, I see old colleague TJ Hernandez. Every time I look at his player page, for some reason, I think the two kind of look the same. But either way, the talent is clearly there with McMillan. There's no question about it. Out of the 11 rookie wide receivers running more than 50% of their team's routes, I mean, he has at 26.1% target share. That's the most of any of those rookie wide receivers. And also his plus 40% air yard share is the highest of any of the freshmen. So his talent, I mean, the reason why the Panthers took them where they did, I mean, that completely makes sense. And we've seen that so far throughout like 8-9 weeks of the season. The only issue that I have with him is that he falls into that same bucket of he is this big bodied wide receiver, but he's paired with a short statured quarterback. And we also saw something similar with Marvin Harrison and Kyler Murray in his rookie season, because throughout the first 5-6 weeks of the year, we saw McMillan used on more in-breaking routes, and those were like highly efficient. I mean, averaging over 3 yards per route run on a lot of those routes, but they were just a third of Bryce Young's dropbacks. And now over the past like 2 to 3 weeks, he's been more on a steady diet of out-breaking routes. They've been trying to find ways to get the ball back over to Teteroa McMillan. And so that's why we've seen more on like out-breaking routes, more go routes and shots down the field, because they're trying to figure out, well, what works best between McMillan and Bryce Young. And so that's the only reason why I downgrade him to in that B range, because it's not really the talent, but if we're thinking about fantasy production, it really is at the intersection of talent and situation. And if we can already say that McMillan is a talented wide receiver, it's just a situation that really brings him back. So I would say he has a B so far throughout the season.
All right, I want to get you updated on our international game right now. We have a field goal by the Colts. It's 17-16. The Falcons are ahead. They have the ball. There's about 9 minutes to go in the game. Of note, if you have Jonathan Taylor so far, you're having a good day. Up to 169 yards of total offense so far for JT. So he continues to have an MVP caliber season, even if a running back will never win the MVP. Let's get Boone back in here for some breaking ranks. We'll let the boys grab a water, catch up on the game, and we'll figure out who's changing in the rankings. Justin Boone, what you got for him?
All right, let's start off with DeAndre Swift. He is up to RB16. Earlier in the week, he was limited in practice. He was dealing with a groin injury. We weren't sure if he was even going to play this week, but he got back to full on Thursday. And then we got another wrinkle because he had a personal issue and he was DNP on Friday. So we weren't sure that he was going to play later in the week. And there was a couple things going on, but now we know he's going to be out there. And this matchup is fantastic. Going against the Giants, they're giving up the third most fantasy points to running backs. The weather also might cause them to run the ball a little more in this game, which is okay because they've loved doing that and they've had a ton of success doing that recently. So DeAndre Swift in that like solid RB2 range, but that doesn't mean you can't play Kyle Monangai either. I think Kyle Monangai is already in that like low end RB2, high end RB3 range. Both these guys can get there, especially in this matchup. So you want to start those guys if you got them. You also want to start Travion Henderson. I have him up to RB17, and reports came out this morning that he's potentially going to get more work in this game. We've seen the last 2 weeks with Ramondre Stevenson out dealing with that toe injury. We've seen Henderson step up, and he's been decent. He hasn't had like that monster game yet, but at least 75 yards from scrimmage in both the last 2 contests. So he's got a good spot here. I think he can win in ways that you can beat that Bucs defense, potentially getting outside, not necessarily just running up the middle at Vita Vea. So this is a game where he can come through, and it sounds like they're going to give him a little more opportunity. So I like to hear that for fantasy. And then the last guy, we'll go with the negative one here, Kamani Vidal. He's down a few spots to RB23. And this one, the more I look at it, it's the offensive line issues. How many offensive linemen can the Chargers lose before it starts impacting this offense? And I think one area where it is really going to impact them is in the run game. The Steelers last week, their run defense came up strong. They've had struggles in that area earlier in the season, but last week they looked really good. And I worry here that the Steelers defensive front is just going to handle the Chargers offensive line and all the backups and even down to third stringers in some spots there. So that makes Kamani Vidal a pretty volatile play. And we've seen already he's been kind of a boomer bust guy. He's had a big game and then a down week and then a big game and a down week. If you follow that trend, maybe he will have a big game in this one. But if you look at the matchup on paper, I just don't think it's a good one fits for him.
Yeah, more and more the offensive line injuries for the Chargers feel like it will at some point derail their season. Let's bring everybody back together. Huddle us up. It is time for some hurry-up offense. Putting 25 seconds on the clock. We'll put the question up, and we'll see how many we can get answered. The first one comes from a name I'm not even going to try to pronounce. Ends with Julian, who says, 12-team PPR league. I have to decide between Krosky Barrett, Khalil Shakir, and Darius Slayton. To me, Bill is a hard pass, and Shakir seems to be the easy answer, but Slayton has a better matchup, but the Bills will probably just run the ball a lot. Question mark. That long of a question can only go to Harmon. Harmon, what do you think?
Yeah, it's Khalil Shakir. You were right. Your gut said it. Full PPR. He's going to catch a lot of passes. Kid named Julian. That's not that hard to pronounce, Fitz.
Oh, kid named Julian. Look, I'm on the fly here. I could get, that was a lot of letters together. I need some capitalization or something.
Is that the,
you know what?
Rebel
had
Lion
to be pointed out.
Yeah, Rebel Lion.
The grenade here. It had to be pointed out. Yeah, give me a break, Fitz. You threw me this question. I at least have to rip.
I also like at the end of it, it's kid named Julian _. Like somebody else already had kid named Julian as a name. What are we doing? This is amazing. All right, now that we've got kid named Julian in there, I didn't see that at all. I'm bad at the license plate game. Let's go to the next one. Dan, our producer, is going to make sure even I can get this one right. Papa says, Dynasty PPR, 1 QB, 12-team flex spot, Travis Etienne or Romeo Doubs for Week 10. What do you think, Chris Allen?
Oof. Between those two, like I was talking earlier, we just don't know what that Packers passing game is going to look like. I'll take the floor of touches for Travis Etienne, even though the Houston defense is something of a tough out for opposing running backs. I'll at least take the safety of the opportunity for Etienne.
Let's get another one in here from Pedro Ramos. Pedro says, full PPR league, Etienne Jr. or Monangai at flex. Already have Walker and Breece Hall at running back slots. Thanks. What do you think, Boone?
I mean, it's the Travis Etienne show. We're going with Travis Etienne here. As much as I like Monangai, talked about him a second ago in the last segment, I don't think that you can go with him over Etienne, who we know is the starter on his team. And like Chris said, we know is going to get pretty solid volume in a matchup that they can win.
I was ready to really say Kidname D. Julian. That's how confused I got on a kid named Julian. That's where we are. I'm going to spend some time thinking about what I did wrong here. Still ahead. Wherefore art thou, Romeo? We better be in your lineup. We'll tell you why on the other side. Some Romeo love coming up. Kidname D. Julian. Welcome back to Fantasy Football Live. I'm your host, Jason Fitz, with Matt Harmon, Chris Allen, and of course, Justin Boone, as we get you caught up on everything you need to know on everything going on all the way up to kickoff. And don't worry, if you're out there on Twitter X, our very own Scott Pianowski just scooched on over to his cup of cocoa, and he's ready to get comfy and answer your questions there too. So all you got to do is use the hashtag AskFFL to get in on the fun. You don't have to ask anybody if you're going to win your league this weekend if you have Jonathan Taylor playing. Right now, we got the Falcons and the Colts in Berlin. I just want to stress the number there. Jonathan Taylor responsible for 252 yards of total offense so far in this game and 2 touchdowns, including one that was, 83 yards just a minute ago. 22-17, the 2-point conversion, no good for the Colts. But, my God, if you have Jonathan Taylor in right now, you can just start your trash talking early and do it often because you are going to kick everybody's butt. What a day for what the player that, in my opinion, should be the league MVP. Gentlemen, let's get into some lock it in. These are matchup-proof players. No matter what happens this weekend, no matter who they're playing, you believe they can fly. Chris Allen, who do you got for me?
I'm locking in Deebo Samuel, and I know it's probably going to be something of a beatdown for the Commanders facing a pissed-off Lions team after their division loss last week. But at least in this game, we now have 4 games with Deebo Samuel without Terry McLaurin in them. And in those games, he had target shares or target totals of 6, 11, 5, and 6, which is good for 30.4% of the looks in the Commanders passing game. Even better, he did have one of those games with Marcus Mariota starting. And Cliff Kingsbury, he has dialed up play action on around 26-27% of Mariota's dropbacks, making things a little bit easier for him. And even though the Lions defense should be going after Marcus Mariota on as often as possible, they are the same secondary that's allowing the 4th most yards after the catch per reception to slot receivers over their last 6 games. So despite the potential letdown spot for the Commanders, Deebo Samuel should be a guy you can lock into your lineups for Week 10.
Boone, you're up next. Give me a lock-in matchup-proof player.
I'm going with Romeo Doubs, and I know he's going against the Eagles, and that doesn't look great on paper. And this year, he's the wide receiver 25 in fantasy points per game, which does look good on paper. And yet, he's only finished as the wide receiver 25 or better twice. He had a 3-touchdown game. That's doing a lot of the work there, Fitz. But we have Tucker Kraft out. We don't know when Jaden Reed's coming back. We don't know if Matthew Golden's going to play in this game. Dontavian Wicks is banged up. We're not sure what his status is. So we saw last week after Kraft got hurt that Doubs got a lot more volume. He had 10 targets, caught 7 of them for 91 yards. I think it's possible that he goes out against this Eagles team and puts up a big game here. We know he can always find the end zone. I'm not predicting 3 touchdowns, but I think he can definitely be a top 20 fantasy receiver for you this week. And he kind of has to be for that Packers passing attack.
All right, get one more in, Matt Harmon. Who do you have that's locked in and matchup proof? I'm going to learn how to speak.
Yeah, Zay Flowers is a guy that I'm locking in this week. Listen, he's been awesome this season, and despite the fact they're going against that Vikings defense that is very good and puts some pressure on quarterbacks, they mix things up coverage-wise in the back end. Zay Flowers is the man no matter what type of coverage the Baltimore Ravens get. Against man coverage, he's one of the most efficient receivers in the league. Against zone coverage, which the Vikings do play a good bit of zone coverage, he is the only one with a yards per route run over 1.0 among the wide receivers and tight ends, and he's over 2.0. So there's a pretty healthy gap in terms of who is productive when this team faces zone coverage on the season so far. Flowers is a guy that I think you can lock into lineups despite any matchup. Even this one, I think he gets off for a pretty good game here against this Vikings defense.
All right, we're going to keep breaking it down, but for a minute, at least, Harmon and I get to take a little break. Boone, Chris, why don't you guys figure out some fantasy face-off while Harmon and I go make some tea?
Yeah, we don't normally go to tight ends, I think, for the fantasy face-off here, Chris, but let's do it this week. And we're going to build it around Colston Loveland. And I mentioned earlier there's a bit of a weather situation in that game. I think the snow and rain is going to be done according to all our weather experts out there, and that's why we have you to talk about this. But I think it's going to be done before the game, it sounds like. Wind is going to be the problem here. And yet, we have Colston Loveland, who's coming off this massive breakout game. 6 catches, 118 yards, 2 touchdowns. The matchup was basically perfect for him last week. Or we know who it was against. I'm sorry, I won't mention any names. But goes out, has this huge game. Now this week, not a terrible matchup, kind of middle of the pack against the Giants. Do you want to talk, before we get into some of these players, do you want to talk about the weather situation in that game first?
Yeah, I gave a few notes earlier, but the only caveat I would say for any of the pass catchers in this game is around 23 miles sustained going in line with the stadium. And so when I say the direction of the wind, it's that you just have to be concerned about a potential for a cross piece. And that's where you can see the scenario for passes getting pushed to the left or deep shots or something along those lines. But even once you get past 20 miles per hour, that's historically where you've seen pass rates drop, completion percentage over expected also start to dip, and play volume also start to fade as well, because if you have fewer passes and more rushing attempts, that's when the clock starts to speed up things a bit more and you have like fewer plays in that particular game. So that's my general concern for that whole game and environment between the Giants and the Bears.
And it gets tricky when you're trying to figure out, like, is it going to impact receivers and deep shots? Are tight ends potentially going to get some more targets because they're going to throw short more? There's a lot of things to factor in, but let's look at Colston Loveland against some of these other tight ends in a similar range in the rankings. The first guy is Dallas Goedert, who hasn't put up huge yardage totals, but continues to find the end zone. Who would you be starting this week between Loveland and Goedert?
I lean a bit more towards Dallas Goedert in this matchup, and I don't care as much if A.J. Brown has been practicing fully throughout the week with the hamstring injury. It'd be easier if there was some uncertainty around him, but I still like Goddard's chances a bit more over Loveland. And the Eagles tight end has had over 40% of the red zone targets in 4 of the last 5 games, and I'll also be facing the Packers defense, where they just gave up 74 yards and 2 touchdowns to Trey McBride, 40 yards and a touchdown to Jake Ferguson, 64 yards and a score on 6 catches to Zach Ertz earlier in the year. So their linebacking group has been something of an issue for them. So I would say if there was between those two, I think I lean a bit more in the favor of Dallas Goedert.
Yeah, same. And I mean, it's funny because Goddard under 45 yards in every game this season but one. But like I said, tons of touchdowns, 7 TDs in his last 6 outings. I'm willing to bank on that. I'm also going with Goddard here. What about if we go rookie versus rookie? Harold Fannin Jr., who had some injury concerns this week, but is going to play against Loveland.
I'll go Loveland here because Fannin did have that DMP on Thursday. If it had been earlier in the week, I would have been at least a bit more excited about Fannin coming back. But still, the limited session on Friday also because of the injury. And of course, David Njoku not getting traded before the deadline. Also, looking at the game environment, we were talking about the weather in Chicago, but also there are some concerns in East Rutherford, New Jersey. But 38-point projected total for the Browns versus Jets versus 46.5 for that Bears game. So even though there might be some concern between the split between Loveland and Cole Kmet, I still think that Loveland with his upside as a receiver gives him the edge here in between him and Harold Fannin.
Yeah, the only reason I think you would consider Fannin potentially here is just because they're going against that Jets defense that might be completely demoralized after the trade deadline and losing their 2 best players. So that might be a reason to consider him, but I agree with you. I think we got to chase this potential Loveland breakout because I don't think it was a blip on the radar. I think this could continue the rest of the season, and that puts him in that low-end tight end 1 conversation, not quite above a guy like Dallas Goedert, but certainly at the moment above Harold Fannin Jr. What about against an old favorite here? Mark Andrews, another guy who's not putting up huge yardage, but can just go off. We know when Lamar Jackson's out there, he can have these multi-touchdown games. So who would you want to play this week, Loveland or Andrews?
So I lean towards Andrews. I'm not as confident about this one as I was between the other two, but I can understand if you wanted to go with Loveland instead of Mark Andrews, because Andrew has 5 targets, more than 5 targets, just 2 of his last 5 games. But if you watched him last Thursday in primetime against the Dolphins, you can see why he's the upside play. I mean, a 33% target rate when Baltimore gets into the red zone. And we just watched the Vikings get smoked by Sam Laporta for 97 yards and a touchdown. And Arondé Gadsden got them for 77 yards and a touchdown too. So while the target share might not be there, and I completely agree with Harmon's call earlier about locking in a guy like Zay Flowers if we want to try and get some of the pass production for Lamar Jackson. If we had to choose a tight end that's going to get into the end zone between Andrews and Loveland, I have to lean Andrews here.
Yeah, it's funny because in 2 of the 4 starts that Lamar Jackson's had, we have Andrews going out there and putting up 2 touchdowns in 2 of those games, right? Like 2 touchdown games are rare for tight ends. That could make your week potentially. And yet still, I'm giving the edge just by a little bit to Loveland. I agree. I want to go with Loveland here. I just want to see what he can become. And I think this is the start of him becoming a guy that we feel good about in our lineups week in and week out. All right. Harmon and Fitz are all rested here. Let's get them back in here for some Make Your Pick.
All right, scooch on over. Let's get things going. Make your pick time, Harmon. This is where we help some people out with some picks, and they'll figure it out. Jamie Chambers is the first question that comes in. This one, great. He says, hey, guys, thanks for your help with this one. Half PPR, need 2. Dowdle, Olave, Vidal, and Odunze. What do you got for me, Harmon?
Yeah, Rico Dowdle is a locked-in player for me at this point. We saw last week he's clearly taken over that backfield. They're bringing in, Key and Peele to do little sketches with him. He's videoing in. He's the guy for this team, okay? Rico Dowdle's locked in. The other guy we're going to play is Romeo Dunze. I know he had the 0 spot for you last week, but it's a good bounce-back spot for him to rebound here. Giant secondary man coverage. Romeo Dunze is really good against man coverage, so I'll go him slightly over Chris Olave there.
All right, let's get the next one in coming in on this end. Hashtag Let's Go Mets says, see, I figured that one out. PPR, Bam Knight, Isaiah Davis, or Chris Rodriguez, and then flex, Tet versus Jennings. What do you think?
Oh, jeez, God. These are some rough names here. I'll take the wide receiver one first. I actually think I would go Juwan Jennings slightly over Tetero McMillan, who's coming into this game with a hamstring injury. It's a low-volume passing game. The margin for error for McMillan is just not great right now. So I will go Juwan Jennings over McMillan at flex there. This cast of characters at running back, I mean, I'd say you can't go wrong. You can't go right. I think I'll go with Bam Knight, though, I guess, just because he is kind of the nominal starter for this team right now. But that is not a great backfield to be invested in. But I guess he's the answer there.
Quick update, Tyler Algier has scored a touchdown for the Falcons. The 2-point conversion is going to be replayed many times as Drake London just leaves the defender on the ground. It's now 25-22 with the minute 44 to go. The Falcons are ahead of the Colts. Keep you updated. Ben is the next question on Make Your Pick, and this is the scenario he gives us. Kamara, Jacoby Myers, Woody Marks, Tyrone Tracy, need 2. Hashtag Make Your Pick. What do you think, Harmon?
I think I'm going to go back to Tyrone Tracy here. I know it was really disappointing last week to see him outsnapped by Devin Singletary, but it's a good matchup for him to rebound in this one. And look, the coaching staff kind of talked about it. It wasn't necessarily the plan. They were going to play him behind Devin Singletary. It just kind of happened with the flow of the game. So I'll go back to Tyrone Tracy here. Jacoby Myers is just really risky to start in his first game with the team, especially in a tough secondary matchup. So I'll go Woody Marks there over Alvin Kamara. As I mentioned, the usage for Kamara is not great. The Carolina run defense is pretty good. I'll go Woody Marks for that second running back spot.
All right, one more that we'll get in here from Lenny. Lenny asks, Super Flex League with half PPR, pick 2. Mayfield, Williams, or Judkins. What say you?
I mean, definitely Baker Mayfield, obviously. If you can play a quarterback in the super flex spot, you're doing it. Kyron Williams versus Quinshon Judkins is a really tough debate there. I think I might give the edge to Quinshon Judkins, though, because this is one of the few times you're going to feel really confident in him going into a matchup where there's a chance the Browns could control this game against a potentially inferior opponent there that just lost Quinton Williams on the defensive line. So I think Judkins is in line for a big week here.
All right, let's figure it out. We'll keep figuring it out. I'm flustered here. The Colts have the ball in midfield. We'll keep you updated on this game. This looks like we're headed for a wild finish in Berlin. Coming up next, the Steelers and Jalen Warren in Southern California Sunday night to take on the Chargers. We'll tell you what to expect from this matchup. Are we sleeping on these teams, or should we be sleeping on them? We'll figure it out coming up next. Welcome back to Fantasy Football Live. I'm Jason Fitz with Matt Harmon, Chris Allen, Justin Boone, as we get you caught up on everything you need to know. It's coming down to the wire in Berlin. We'll keep you updated on how that game plays out. Right now, we've got 25-22, the Falcons with the lead. Daniel Jones just took a sack, so obviously we'll see what the Colts are capable of doing. He took a sack, and they were at about midfield, so that's going to set them back even farther as they try and get in field goal range to tie the game. If it happens, you'll hear us collectively scream and lose our minds. So you'll know what's going on. In the meantime, we'll all lose our minds when we watch Sunday Night Football. We've got Steelers at Chargers. Chargers, despite all of their injuries, favored by 2.5 on this one. The over-under 44.5. Matt Harmon, what you got your eyes on for this matchup?
Man, the Joe Alt injury for the Los Angeles Chargers, he suffered a second ankle sprain of the season. He's going to be out for the year, season-ending surgery. It's just so massive. Can't stress it enough. Joe Alt is one of the best left tackles in football after moving over from right tackle as a rookie. He is being fantastic. And there's a huge drop-off, particularly in the passing game when Alt is not in there. Ray Garvin brought these stats to our show earlier this week. EPA per dropback goes from 0.23 to minus 0.09 without Joe Alt in the mix. Touchdown interception ratio for Justin Herbert, 11-3 with Alt, 7-5 without. Passer rating, 108.4 to 87.3. They're 4-0 when Joe Alt plays, are the Los Angeles Chargers. They're 2-3 without him. You guys know this is one of my favorite passing games to watch. I've been really excited about this group all season long. Not having Joe Alt really takes the air out of the balloon. They already have other injuries along the offensive line, but this is the one they absolutely could not afford to lose.
Chris Allen, what you got your eyes on for in this Sunday night matchup?
So kind of following on the heels of Harmon's concern for the Chargers protection unit, I'm looking at one of their pass catchers, and that is tight end Oronde Gadsden. And we're looking at a rookie tight end, and typically I'm skittish about rookie tight ends because it's a difficult position to learn in the NFL. But we've already started to see the signs of Gadsden as a breakout pass catcher. I mean, weeks 3 through 8, his route rate increased from 28% up to 91%. Target share up to around 20% in 4 straight games. And they're not just dump off targets. I mean, 13 of them have come on timing routes. Herbert's also looking for him down the field on go routes. I mean, this is where we've really started to see him break out, not just as, again, just the check down type of valve we've seen in other situations. He really is being used as a wide receiver in that Chargers offense. But to Harmon's point earlier, I'd say the best part of it is that part of his breakout came during one of those games where the Chargers offensive line was banged up, earned 20% of Herbert's targets in week 4 against the Giants when they were blitzing the crap out of Justin Herbert. So I would assume that in this game, the Steelers are going to continue to try and turn up the heat as much as possible on Justin Herbert. And so with as well as Gadsden has played and how well that he's been able to get in line with Justin Herbert, even if the protection unit does break down, I would expect that Gadsden's rapport with Justin Herbert should keep him as a, let's say, potential tight end 1 for week 10.
Boom, what do you got your eyes on for in this matchup?
I'm looking at Jaylen Warren right now, and I just think he's so underrated. He's kind of matchup proof because no matter what happens in the game, he's going to be involved. If they go down, he's going to catch passes. And right now, he's the RB19 in fantasy points per game, and he's maintained around 60% of the snaps. He's the clear lead guy there. All the talk before the season that, you know, Caleb Johnson, the rookie, could eventually get involved and maybe down the stretch he would have a bigger role. It's not happening. So this is Jaylen Warren's backfield, and he's had some really good games, but I think he's about to erupt here. I have him as a top 15 fantasy back this week. And moving forward after this Chargers game, the schedule is so easy. The Bengals in week 11, the Bears in week 12, the Bills in week 13, the Ravens in week 14, the Dolphins in week 15. That matchup we're always looking for when it comes to fantasy running backs. Those are all positive matchups for fantasy RBs. 4 of them are inside the top 8 in terms of fantasy points allowed to the position here. So we haven't seen any reason to think that Jaylen Warren is going to lose this job. And I just don't think people are viewing him like what he is, which is a high-end RB2 for fantasy and a guy that I think is going to put up a lot of RB1 fantasy performances down the stretch.
Great analysis by you guys. We have 29 seconds left in Berlin. Right now, the Colts are lining up as we speak to attempt a field goal that would tie the game. The kick is up. The kick is good. We have a 25-25 tie. And the legend of Daniel Jones is only going to get bigger as he took them down a 2-minute drive where he is now bleeding from the mouth. Like, I don't know what happened, but there's just blood gushing out of his mouth as he's throwing the football. It's going to make for good TV. The replay over and over and over again of blood. It's a very Halloween of him a few days late. We'll keep you updated on the game. We might get some free football. You never know. In the meantime, let's get to some primetime picks. Huzzah! The noise you hear is a whole parade walking down the street. There's confetti. There are floats. Matt Harmon gets off the schneid and gets his first win of the season. Harmon, would you like to say anything? Is there anybody you'd like to thank before we start this process?
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about, Fitz. We don't take victory laps over one win. It's a long season. We're going to continue to push. We're on to week 10.
Well, for the first time in what feels like the entire season, that means the draft order has changed remarkably. Justin Boone, by the way, still killing all of us in this contest. But here are our 3 games this week. Rams, 49ers, and then the Sunday night matchup we talked about, the Steelers and Chargers, and then Philly and Green Bay. Those are the 3 games to pick from. Snake Draft, we start with Chris Allen. You go first, my friend, for the first time. You got first shot at it. What you going to give us?
Right. At this point, I'm also blaming the Browns and the Blackburns for my primetime picks. I'm just going to continue to just throw the Bengals front office under the bus at any point that I can. But I'm going to go with Christian McCaffrey here. I mean, easy load of touches for him. It should be might be a tough out against the Rams, but still, CMC number 1.
All right. That means, Harmon, you are on the board. What you got for us?
Yeah, Puka Nacua, I know he's dealing with a little bit of a chest injury, but he's expected to play. He's expected to be full go. He is awesome at football, and I think he's going to be a good pick here.
I love both of those picks by you guys. I don't usually play with any sort of weird I'll wait and see strategy. I'm doing that today because now that you guys have taken Christian and Puka off the board, I'll just take whatever scrap heap I can get off of that game. I'm worried about getting nothing on some of these other games because I have to wait a long time for some of these picks. So I'll actually take the one guy maybe I trust in Sunday Night Football, Ladd McConkey. I'll come out with some Ladd to start with and then send it to Boone. Boone gets 2 in a row. What do you got?
This is an interesting one. I'm very torn between Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs in that same game. I'm going to go with Saquon. Going to chase the talent. I really like what we saw from him before the bye, so I'll take Saquon here. And then I'm going to wait on the Rams game because I think there's 2 players that are kind of equally valued in my mind. So I'm going to go to the Steelers. I'm going to take Jaylen Warren, who I just talked up. I think he could have a really strong performance in that one.
And I don't need to be snarky here. Like, I knew you would either take Saquon or you would take Josh Jacobs, and I was comfortable taking whichever one you didn't take. So I will just go to the board with Josh Jacobs and say, okay, this kind of worked out the way I don't usually feel good about my picks at all. I feel pretty good about like where I am, how this thing's played out. I think I'm making the most of the board in front of me, and that means I throw to Matt now. I haven't had to do this all year. I throw to Harmon because he's not – you don't get 2 straight picks, Harmon. What are you going to do?
Anyways, I'm going to take Devontae Smith here. I'm going to take Devontae Smith here. A lot of good options in that game's on the Eagles side of it, so I was comfortable waiting around for that game. And I really like getting Devontae Smith here. I'm going to talk about him in a little bit.
Chris, stretch your legs. You got a long run coming here. You got 2 picks in a row, which was the obvious key advantage that Harmon used to get his win last week. So can you do the same? What are you going to do with your 2 straight picks?
I love it. I'll take DK Metcalf first off as my second pick here. Chargers secondary actually looking like they're a little bit banged up. Pass volume hasn't really been there for him like we wanted, but I'll still take DK in this game. And then on the flip side, or on the wrap here, I'll take Dallas Goedert for some of the same reasons I was outlining earlier for his usage as a pass catcher once the Eagles get into the red zone.
Which means, Harmon, you are back up. What you going to give us?
Yeah, I like what Chris mentioned earlier about Oronde Gadsden being somebody that I think can actually have some good moments without Joe Alt in the lineup, because he's kind of an answer. You dump it off to him in the flat, and he's their best. Him and Ladd McConkey are their best run after catch players by a good bit. So I think Gadsden can still survive against the Steelers defense that just got obliterated by Tucker Kraft a few weeks ago.
That means I'm back up, and the way the board fell, I'm just going to take Kyren Williams. If I can take, I know it's not necessarily a great matchup in some ways, but if I can take a starting running back in that matchup, I will take that. So I just feel good about Kyren Williams throwing to Boone. Who you got? You said it was between 2 players. So did you get your pick of the 2 coming into the last pick?
Yeah, I feel like you and I have been like hand in hand here throughout this one. It was Barkley or Jacobs. You took Jacobs when he was left over. It was Kyren or it was Devontae Adams for me, and I'll take Devontae Adams. I mean, 5 touchdowns in the last 2 games. why not take the guy that has a shot to put up a huge game by finding the end zone a few times?
Yeah, the number of times, Boone has come in and said, why not? We'll see with the last guy, and that's the guy that ends up rolling for 30 points in the game. So, I feel, look, go hammer Devontae Adams today. That's the lesson everybody should learn. All right, we'll keep you updated on how it goes, especially if Harmon loses. All the pressure's on Chris now to see if he can get out of the basement. None of us are catching Boone. Let's get to the hurry-up offense YouTube chat questions galore. So we're going to get a bunch of them answered right here. 25 seconds on the clock. Harmon, you get to stretch with the first one. This one comes in. Hey, guys, full PPR, McMillan, Monangai, or Aaron Jones in my flex. What do you think?
Ooh, man, mentioned earlier that I am a little bit concerned about McMillan in this matchup just because, again, he's coming in with the hamstring injury. You're counting on low volume overall with Bryce Young and how much they want to run the football. So I think I might be spicy and play Kyle Monangai here. It's a good matchup for him. He played really well last week. I expect him to still get a ton of carries in that backfield.
All right, this next one has been requested. This was request line. It came in straight for Boone. Big money Boone. I need a wide receiver. Parker, Wash, D. Slayton, or Luther Burden. What do you got for Ghetto Glory?
We're going with Parker Washington, and I know that they made the trade to get Jacoby Myers, but he's still got to get up to speed. I know that Downey Brown's back and Tim Patrick is back, but still, they've talked up that they're going to use Parker Washington out of the slot. That's the money position in the Liam Cohen offense. I think he's going to have a good game this week. Long term, maybe not so much, but this week I think he's going to be good.
Chris, you get the next one. Let's see if we can help Stacy Lewis. She says, help. Only girl in my league. They don't want to lose to me. LOL. Lesser of the two evils. Full PPR. Vidal or Brees. I know. SMH. What do you think, Chris?
Oh, that's good problems to have with having two solid running backs. And while I know the matchup is not going to be all that great for him, I will say that Breece Hall would be my lean in this particular game. Going up against the Browns defense should be tough, but given the floor of touches that we've seen from Breece and from Vidal, he's started to lose some work to Jared Patterson. I would say Breece is the better of the two options.
Keep the questions coming. We'll get more of them in. They're going to get more football in Berlin. We are headed to overtime. We'll keep you updated on that. And still ahead, you might not want to check in on your 401k, but you do want to check in on your fantasy stock watch. We'll figure out some of the market movers that you can look at for this weekend. Welcome back to Fantasy Football Live. I'm your host, Jason Fitz, with Matt Harmon, Chris Allen, Justin Boone. As we come to you right now, we have overtime football in Berlin between the Falcons and the Colts in what has been an absolutely epic day for Jonathan Taylor. 252 total yards, 2 touchdowns. You see it right there. We're tied at 25. The Falcons have gotten the ball first in overtime. A reminder to anyone that hasn't been paying attention, the overtime rules have changed slightly in the NFL regular season this year to match the overtime rules of the playoffs. So that means that even if the Falcons go down and score a touchdown, the Colts will have the chance to go down and score a touchdown of their own. The game does not end on a touchdown anymore in overtime on that first possession. So just a reminder that there's still plenty of opportunities for points and yards galore for everybody from a fantasy standpoint. Let's take a look at the Monday Night Football matchup, boys. We got Eagles at Packers. It's this week's game of the century. The Packers favored by 1, over under on this 45.5. This game going to be taking place at Lambeau Field. We all know that. Boone, what you got your eyes on in this one?
I want to know, what is life without Tucker Kraft going to be like for this Packers offense, especially for the passing attack? And I feel like every time I say life without Tucker Kraft, it makes me want to throw up in my mouth, because we were recommending him all year. He was on so many of my teams. I was crushing with him, and now I got to replace him the rest of the way. Just awful. You might want to replace him the rest of the way with Luke Musgrave, who is actually going to take his spot in real life, but probably not this week, because the matchup against the Eagles, not so good. They're the 3rd toughest matchup for fantasy tight ends. So you can stash Musgrave. I don't think he's going to necessarily have a big game in this one. Then you look at the receiving core. We talked about Romeo Doubs already. I really like him. I think he's going to get increased volume. I think he can score a ton of touchdowns. I think he's a guy that you definitely want to get in your fantasy lineup. After that, it's like the entire receiving core is banged up, right? Dontavian Wicks, we're not sure if he's going to play. Savion Williams is banged up. All these guys are hurt. We don't know when Jaden Reed's coming back. So you look at Christian Watson as someone that just came back. He's gone over 55 yards in the first 2 games returning. I think he's a guy that you can get into your lineup as a wide receiver 4 flex option, and somebody that we know can hit big plays. We know can find the end zone. So I think he's a really interesting play. But overall, this Packers passing attack, I think, is going to have some growing pains in a tough matchup, and without, I think, arguably their best player on offense the rest of the way. So Jordan Love now, just a very risky QB2 streamer, and not somebody that I'd be looking to play in this matchup.
We're still trying to figure out who Jordan Love is sometimes. It's kind of crazy to me. Harmon, what you got your eyes on in this one?
Yeah, is Devontae Smith the actual wide receiver 1 on the Philadelphia Eagles? And I don't think this is that crazy to say at this point anymore. On the season, he's on film clearly been the better player than A.J. Brown. But from a production standpoint, this actually goes back to last season. If you just put it around midpoint of November last year, A.J. Brown has 122 targets. Devontae Smith has 105 targets. Despite that, Devontae Smith has 87 catches to 75 for A.J. Brown. This also includes their playoff run, by the way. He also averages 68.4 yards per game. Does Devontae Smith 59.9 yards per game for A.J. Brown, and Devontae Smith straight up has more fantasy points in that total on a per game basis than A.J. Brown does. And look, I think A.J. Brown has started to play a little bit better prior to that hamstring injury that kept him out before the bye. But again, on film, Devontae Smith made a big leap last year into, I think, true number 1 wide receiver category. They move him around. He gets the advantageous matchups. He can win in the spread offense that they get into. He can also win on these in-breaking routes that they're trying to hit off this new under-center play action wrinkles that they're using in their offense. So I just think Devontae Smith is having a quietly fantastic season so far this year, and he's the best and most consistent player in that Eagles offense wire to wire this season, and I don't think it's particularly close.
Chris, what you got your eyes on in this matchup?
So Harmon was just talking about Devonta Smith, and I'll talk about the guy that's throwing him the ball, and Jalen Hurts, and the, I would say, increased efficiency that we've seen out of Hurts as a pocket passer this year. Because I would say that the state of the Eagles offensive line has been one of the larger talking points, but it's really been mostly centered around how it's affected Saquon Barkley and the lack of his explosive runs. However, one of the byproducts in that offensive line shuffle has been Hurts' pre-snap alignment. over the first 6 weeks of the season, he was under center on 15.7% of his dropbacks, which is about the same as it was last year, but the efficiency wasn't there. I mean, he did have a slight step back in terms of his EPA per dropback, and we felt some of that, right? The types of the locker room vibes that we were getting after the games. And of course, AJ Brown's "the enemy speaks kindly and holds a knife" type tweets we've been seeing for him across social media. That's in a part of the, I would say, consternation we have with that passing game. But over the past 2 weeks and before they headed into the bye, he was under center on over 40% of his dropbacks. We saw his efficiency really start to shoot up, passing success rate over 48% in week 7 and week 8. And he's been just immaculate against the blitz. 5 touchdowns when the defense has sent more than 5 rushers. So in this game, we already know Cam Judkins is going to be out. Willie Lampkin has the Q tag, so similar problems, but at least Hurts and OC Kevin Patullo have solutions to keep that have the Eagles passing game still on schedule.
All right, in Berlin, the Falcons have not punted, which means we are in sudden death territory. They punted, and the Colts got the ball almost at midfield on that punt. So the Colts are going to drive and try and see if they can end this early football matchup. All right, better than the Mega Powers, better than Batman and Robin, better than Air Supply. Harmon, Boone, guys, take over. Let's get a fantasy stock watch from you guys.
All right, let's see who's trending up and who's trending down at this point in the fantasy football season. Boone, I'm going to let you kick it off first here. Who's got a stock up tag for you right now?
Well, this is going to be no surprise to you because I talked about this guy on the fantasy forecast on Thursday as somebody that I think people should be going out and trying to buy pretty aggressively. That's Quinshon Judkins on the Browns. The shoulder injury that he suffered before the bye, that's not going to keep him out. He was practicing in full this week. Now he gets to go up against this Jets defense that we've already mentioned, traded away 2 of their best players. I think they're going to be very vulnerable. And even with those guys in the lineup prior to this, they were the 7th best matchup for fantasy running backs. But the reason that I'm saying his stock is going up and up and up is his schedule the rest of the season. The Jets this week, then the Ravens, the Raiders, the Niners, the Titans, the Bears, the Bills. Those are his next 7 games. The guy's already been a top 12 fantasy back on a per game basis so far. Harmon, I think he's going to be an RB1 and a guy that could potentially help people win leagues this year. I think Quinshon Judkins is going to have a big game this week, and I think that maybe the window's already closed to try to get him, but he is a great player and his stock is on the rise.
Yeah, I would say that window probably lasts about 12 more minutes before the kickoff today. That's about the win. That's about what's left of that window to get Quinshon Judkins on your fantasy team. So I'm not sure that one's going to work out, but I do love that call. I think Judkins is clearly a stock up player. And this is not going to be a surprise to you or anyone else who's heard me yap about this player in the last week. Marvin Harrison Jr., I think, stock up right now because Jacoby Brissett is the quarterback for the Arizona Cardinals going forward. Kyler Murray has been placed on IR. You're already starting to hear sounds like the Cardinals and Kyler Murray might be headed for a little bit of a divorce. I've been talking about that as a clear and obvious thing that's coming all season long. It's just an oil and water thing here. Kyler Murray is not a fit for Drew Petzing's offense. You can say what you want about Petzing as a coach, but Kyler Murray just doesn't fit the offense. He can go find some success elsewhere potentially, but it's not going to be with this team. And that really matters for Marvin Harrison Jr., who, this is what I've been saying since he was drafted by this team. The throws are there. He's open on these big in-breaking routes, off play action, under center concepts. And Jacoby Brissett is just a better fit to get Marvin Harrison Jr. the ball there. I'm not saying that Harrison is a matchup-proof player. I know that he crushed the Cowboys in last week's game, and obviously going to Seattle here is a much tougher spot for Harrison and Brissett. So I'm not saying every single week wide receiver 1, just copy-paste what we got last week. But Boone, at least it's more viable now. Like, we would go into generous matchups for Harrison and think, well, shoot, he's lucky if he gets 5 targets against the dang Titans early on this year, and he better make one big play to happen. We saw last week, Brissett's actually going to be intentional with how he gets him the ball. So at least he's got a shot to hit these big matchups. That just didn't exist in the Kyler Murray world. But those are the 2 players trending up for us here. Who's got a stock down on the negative side of things right now?
I think it's Rachaad White. And when he took over this job and Bucky Irving got hurt, we didn't know how long it was going to be for. I don't think we thought it was even going to be for this long. And the first couple games, he was great for fantasy. The last couple weeks, not so much. Didn't even reach double-digit fantasy points in those 2 outings. We've seen Sean Tucker get a little more involved. And now this week, we have that Bucs offense going against the Patriots. They're the 4th hardest opponent for fantasy backs. So you felt good about getting these replacement starts, and you kind of got lucky that it's gone on longer than maybe everyone believed. And yet at some point, Bucky Irving is going to be back. It might be another week or so, but he is going to be back. I think now you got to move off of Rachaad White. And unfortunately, I'm worried about him having potentially another down game this week. So I think the arrow is pointing down on him. And when Bucky does come back, there's still some value for Rachaad White. Like, he's a flex play for fantasy, but just not a guy that you're necessarily going to want in your lineup once that happens.
I'll be negative here on a wide receiver whose game I really do like, and that is rookie wide receiver Tetairoa McMillan. Been talking about it throughout the course of the show, but I think this is more than just a this week problem for him. I think from a fantasy standpoint, he is in a really difficult spot because he plays for a team in Carolina that ranks 30th in neutral pass rate so far since week 6. And like, I watched the Panthers and I watched Rico Dowdle and I watched their passing game, and I think, yeah, I wouldn't want to be a pass heavy team if I was the Carolina Panthers. I'd want to be putting that ball in Rico Dowdle's hand over and over and over again. And I think that's what we're going to continue to see with this football team. So that means that if you're the wide receiver one of that operation, you have to be absolutely perfect to hit from a fantasy football standpoint. And look, I think McMillan has been good this year, but he hasn't been absolutely perfect. He's had some drops. He's had some misses in contested catch situations, which, again, I'm not going to kill him for that. He's a rookie wide receiver. Yeah. Those plays happen for even the good players, but it just is about that margin for error for a guy who's not going to get 8 to 10 targets on a weekly basis. So from a fantasy standpoint, I don't see a path to him being a wide receiver one in the back half of the season. He's going to be more of that really volatile boom bust wide receiver 3, I think, at this point, which is tough considering where he went in drafts and where people were hoping to see that rise over the back half of the year. Long term, I think he'll be very good, but as the X wide receiver who doesn't get to move around in a low volume passing game, just going to be tough to have those monster weeks in fantasy if the situation continues to look like it does in Carolina right now. All right, those are players trending up and down. Let's bring Fitz and Chris back in here for some props.
All right, we'll bring in the props. I'll update you quickly as we bring in the props. The game is over in Berlin. The Colts have won in overtime. They get the walk-off touchdown real quick. You see it there. Jonathan Taylor ends up with 286 yards of total yards, and 3 touchdowns, including the walk-off overtime winning touchdown. So the Colts win in overtime, and if you've got Jonathan Taylor, just start talking your talk. All right, Chris, let's get to bring some props. Give me a prop that you like over the course of this weekend.
So I'm looking at Marcus Mariota's over a total for rushing. I got it at 26.5. And across his 3 starts, his Marcus Mariota, his dropbacks have turned into runs on 18.6% of the time, averaging 29.3 rushing yards per game on those starts. And so going all the way back to week 2, for the Lions who they'll face today, I mean, Caleb Williams got over like 27 yards against them. A healthy Lamar Jackson got 35. Patrick Mahomes got 32. This is a defense where rushing quarterbacks or mobile quarterbacks have been able to at least continue to keep their offense on schedule with some of the rushing portion of it. So if I had to take a over on this game for any of the Commanders' skill players, it would be Marcus Mariota and his rushing.
Yeah, you and I were thinking the same way, even though we didn't know what each other's answers would be. Because my prop here is J.J. McCarthy over on 19.5 rushing yards. Look, I think the key for J.J. McCarthy is going to be, will he be willing to use his legs? And against the Ravens, he should have that opportunity. They run man coverage at the 5th highest rate in the league, which means backs to the quarterback, which means J.J. can extend plays. What do we see week 1? I disagree with some of the harsh analysis of J.J.'s first game back as a starter. I think they need to unfold this offense in layers, much like they did with Jaden Daniels last year in Washington. Spent the first month or 2 of him starting, barely throwing the football past the line of scrimmage. I think we're seeing some of that. That's what we will see. So I trust the young quarterback to use his legs when he needs to against a team that's going to be a man with their back to him. So we agree on the bring the props. Rushing quarterback props are a fun way. It feels like it always takes Vegas a second to catch up with that. We are minutes away from kickoff, so let's do some quick bold predictions. Give me what you got. We'll bring the boys back in. Harmon, you're first up. Give me your quick bold prediction.
Yeah, mine's actually going to tie into this game that we just saw conclude here, and I think Emeka Egbuka is going to be the top-scoring wide receiver of the slate here in Week 10, and a big reason why is we saw Drake London last week move around the formation. He didn't just stick outside, so yeah, him and Christian Gonzalez had some nice matchups there against that Patriots defense, but when he got moved inside, just a complete mismatch there. We saw that once again in this game here where it's like, oh yeah, Sauce Gardner's going to track around Drake London, not when he goes into the slot. And Egbuka plays about a third of his snaps in the slot. So I think he's going to have some opportunities for big plays. He's a great man coverage receiver, and that team has been generous to man coverage this season. So I like Egbuka to have a monster performance in this game.
All right, give me your lightning fast bold prediction, Chris Allen.
Deebo Samuel, already talked about it earlier. He should get into the top 24 in this game. Should be easy layup throws like from Marcus Mariota with the amount of play action they're going to be using. So with the volume we should expect for Samuel without Terry McLaurin, Deebo Samuel the top 24 for this week for sure.
Boom, what do you got?
I want to say Jackson Dart finishes as the QB1 overall. That's been kind of my bold prediction all week. He's been great this year, top 7 fantasy quarterback in 3 of his last 4. Obviously, he's rushing a ton, and the matchup here is great for a rushing QB. And yet the weather does make it a little bit harder for him to hit QB1 overall. So I'll throw in a bonus one, Quinshon Judkins as a top 5 fantasy running back for all the reasons that I just said a minute ago.
My bold prediction is if you have Jonathan Taylor in your league, you probably just won. All right, let's bring off the hurry-up offense. 25 seconds on the clock. I like to keep it spicy on the show. All right, the first one goes to Harmon. And the Harmon, you get this one from Tobinator. Or Tobinator, start 2. Debo, Managai, Wilson. What do you think, Harmon?
Yeah, report from Jay Glazer today that Kyle Monangai and DeAndre Swift are going to start with alternating carries back and forth, splitting carries, and the hot hand is going to rule the day. I think Monangai's hand is pretty dang hot right now. I would play him, and I'm excited I finally get to mention, Garrett Wilson is back. Really excited to see him in this offense now that he's back. So those are the 2 guys we're playing.
All right, BL is up with the next question. RB2 standard, Warren or Swift? Easy question. Let's see if the answer is easy. Chris, what do you think?
I'll have to go with Jaylen Warren for the same reasons that Boone laid out earlier, having over 60% of the running back carries and going up against the Chargers defense that, while it has been somewhat stingy to opposing running backs with the amount of injuries that they've also sustained, I should see an easy path for Warren to be the better of the 2 for Swift, between him and Swift.
All right, the next question comes in from Relac17. We're going to say Relac. All right. Half PPR, Rachaad White, Devonta Smith, Parker Washington, Jaden Waddle. Please pick 2. Thank you. Make your pick. Boom. What do you got?
I'm going with Jalen Waddle for sure. We know that the Bills defense a little banged up there, and we know that Waddle can command a lot of volume. And with all the things going wrong in Miami, he still can get it done. And then I'm going to go Devonta Smith. He's been playing fantastic recently. I think he has another good game in a game that I think is going to be at least fairly high scoring.
All right, the next one comes in from BB. And BB, and we'll get this to Harmon, says ETN or Houston. It's a PPR. Pick 2. ETN or Houston. Tracy is Chicago. Shakir, Miami. Rachaad White versus Pats. Make your pick. What do you think?
Yeah, this one's tough. I do think I'm going to remove Shakir from this one just from some of the volume concerns we know are present with that Bills passing game. I think I will go Rachaad White versus New England. They can no, you know what? Now I'll go Tracy and ETN. Tough call. I'll go Tracy and ETN. Why not?
Man, we flustered Harmon. That's impossible. Kowalski's the next question. Chris, you get this from Kowalski. He says, Henderson, Monangai, White, or Tet McMillan? What do you think?
Out of that group, oh man, this one's going to be tough. I mean, I don't like the hot hand situation for Monangai. Rachaad White, he's been somewhat cheeks as a running back over the past few weeks, and Tet McMillan has the hamstring injury. I'll take the upside with Travion Henderson. I heard Boone talking about him earlier as a guy that we should at least have a little bit more confidence in. 5 targets last week, and that's the way you should beat the Bucs defense. I'll go with Henderson.
I don't usually love modern vernacular across the board, but cheeks is just one of my favorite things. I feel like I use cheeks all day, every day. I don't know if I should at my age. Logan Hardy asked the last question here. We'll get make your pick. RB2 and flex between Judkins, Henderson, Barkley. Pick 2. What do you think, Boone?
I think you have to go Barkley, but man, that's tough because I think Judkins is going to have a huge game, and I think Henderson has a chance to maybe finally have that breakout game that he hasn't been able to get done yet. But it's got to be Barkley.
You get one more. I think it says pick 2. You get one more. You got one more?
Oh, all right. Then we're taking Judkins. Sorry, I missed the pick 2. Yeah, Judkins. All right, great. Then I get to throw Judkins in there as well.
Look at that, Logan. I'm a man of the people. I made sure you got your answer. That's it for us. We'll be back next Sunday, as we are every week at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, to help you get your lineup set. And we're around all week. You can check out Yahoo Sports Daily every Monday through Friday. We're here on weekdays from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern. Me and Caroline Fenton hanging out. And then also catch the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast live on Yahoo Fantasy YouTube. Good luck in your matchups. I hope you win and all of your enemies lose. Start that trash talking now. Come back. See us next Sunday.